Hey guys, thanks for coming back. So here's what we're doing today. I want to build a small desk for my wife and I to share. This desk will house our Macs and a few other odds and ends like my wife's planner, so getting a measurement of that is pertinent. For this build I'm using 3/4 inch subfloor that I picked up from Lowe's for about $35. I really like this subfloor because one side is fairly unfinished but another side is very finished and I can use it for a lot of finished products. The thing about this 4x8 sheet of subfloor is it's tongue and groove, so the first thing I have to do is cut one of the grooves off. For this entire build I'm using my Milwaukee circular saw. I'm going to leave a link for this saw down below so you can see exactly what I use, but this saw is fantastic. I've worn the blade out over several projects, so I've needed to change the blade to make this project cut very smooth and smooth like butter. My first big cut I'm going to make is for the outside of my box. This desk is essentially going to be a box with a drawer inside of it. One of the great things about this saw is it cuts 45-degree angles easy, and the blade is easy to angle to 45 degrees. I use that a lot in this project, as you're going to see coming up. My goal on this build was not to see any end edges of any boards on this desk, so I used mitered edges for all of the outside seams of this box. The next two cuts that I have to make are for the top of the desk and the bottom of the desk. Now these are the biggest pieces on the entire desk that I have to do, and I have to get them right. But you're going to see very quickly that I don't get them right. I can't stress enough the measure twice, cut once rule here. I measured the wall and I originally wanted this desk to be 36 inches wide. But you're going to find out that I mess up and I cut 6 inches too short on this second board that I'm cutting and realized that I can only make this desk 30 inches wide. In the end, I think it turned out better, but I definitely messed up on this part. If you want to know a little secret about woodworking and working on projects, especially if you don't have plans, you always mess up and not everything goes as planned. You have to roll with the punches though. You have to go with what you've got and work with what you've got. Most of the time when you see somebody on YouTube especially doing a project or building something complicated or elaborate, they mess up. And in their editing process, they will cover it up. I'm not very good at covering that up, and I don't need to cover it up because you guys need to know that I mess up all the time, almost on every project, but it's about rolling with it and figuring out what's next. Now I have both of the top and the bottom of the desk to 30 inches. It's now time for me to cut the sides of the desk. These sides also have to have mitered 45-degree edges that I will also cut with my circular saw so that there's no end grains that you see on my desk. When cutting angles like this, it is absolutely necessary to have a straight edge and clamps, especially if you're using a circular saw. You also need to know the exact distance from the edge of your saw on each side to the blade on each side to know where to put your straight edge. This is really important because the saw blade width makes a difference most of the time. So now I'm sizing up my sides and making sure that I've got everything square, and I actually have a speed square that has a hole in it that I use with some little Irwin clamps. Those Irwin clamps are fantastic. If you don't have a set of those, they can really grip really strong. So I glue these sides and I brad nail them, and I'm going to cover up the brad nail holes with a little bit of wood putty. And this wood putty is actually called Minwax wood filler. I just picked it up at Lowe's. I actually picked up a really big container of it because I've got a bunch of projects that I need to use it on. You can never put too much wood filler as well because you can always sand it off later. If I did this project again, one of the things that I would do would have a wet towel or a wet old rag next to me to wipe up all the excess glue. I use plenty of glue and I'm happy with the amount of glue on, but I just wish that I would have wiped it up as it was running or as it was oozing. That would have made the cleanup and the sanding process much easier. It was really hot the day that I did this, and that glue dried in about 10 to 15 minutes, and I was able to take those clamps off, and I knew that those sides were square. Now I was able to fit the top on, and getting that top on wasn't too difficult. The box was a little wonky, but I was able to push everything exactly into place. It was probably only off by a millimeter or two, and I lined it up and nailed it, and then you will see that I clamped it. The very next thing that I did was I moved to making the back of the box, and I made another mistake here. I do own a Craig jig, and it was my intention to Craig jig the back of the box to the main frame of the box. But I've never used it before, and I didn't realize that in order to do it right, you can't have your piece of material attached to whatever that you want to attach it to first. So I glued and I nailed this back of the desk on the main frame of the desk before I Craig jigged those pocket hole screws. That was a mistake that I know that I'm not going to make the next time. I ended up countersinking screws in the entire back of the box, in the top and on the sides, exactly what I did not want to do, just for structural support, so that I know that when we lean on this desk, it's not going to pop off the back or fall off the wall in any way. I'm not building this with any plans, so I measure and I build as I go. My next measurement I have to take is for the inside drawer. Now my drawer slides need a ½ inch on each side, and I'm going to leave a ¼ inch on the top and bottom of the drawer. I thought I did a great job with these details, but you'll find out at the end of this video that I did not. I was a 1/16 inch too big on the width of my drawer, but we managed to make it work. I'm building the frame and the outside of my drawer first. My drawer is exactly 6 inches in full depth, and that is including the bottom piece of the drawer. And that bottom piece is 3/4 inch thick, so these sides need to be 5 1/4. I cut a long strip at 5 1/4, and I'm able to cut the entire drawer out of it. Throughout this project, you'll see me use my Milwaukee blower to blow off different pieces of material. That thing is fantastic. It was a little costly, but I do not regret that one bit. That is the most powerful blower I have ever used, especially battery powered. And by the way, FYI, Milwaukee does not sponsor me. I'm just a believer very much in their tools and their system. So I cut the bottom of the drawer, and now it's time for me to dry assemble everything just to make sure everything fits just fine. Once I know that everything fits fine, and I get that bottom on there and I know it's good, all I need to do is glue and nail everything. And again, the one thing that I should have done with the glue is I should have had a wet towel with me, and I should have specially cleaned up the inside corners of this drawer. The outside corners are easy to sand, but when that glue dries, good luck getting it off, especially on an inside corner. It just makes the process really rough. This drawer actually came together really well, and it is strong as an ox, and I know it's going to be dependable for the future. I know I talked a little bit about these Irwin clamps, and I love them, and they're really handy for the projects that I use them for. I only have 4 of them. I think I bought a pack at Christmas time 3 or 4 years ago, and I've used them for everything. I would really like to have a whole nother set of them, 4 more of them, or even 8 more of them for how much I use them. So, hey, Mom and Dad, Christmas is coming. Wink, wink. Now that I got the bottom on one side, I can square up the frame and nail the rest in. It did a really good job, and the glue dried hard as a rock, and that thing's not going anywhere. This little detail that I'm going to do right here is called a beveled edge. This really cleans up the bottom of your drawer or your piece of woodwork or whatever you're doing and makes it look professional. What I'm doing is I'm putting a 5-degree angle on the bottom of my drawer so that every angle and every corner and every side is flush with those sides. After it is sanded, it just makes it feel and look so good. It's a little bit of work with the circular saw because you have to adjust multiple times for all those 4 sides, but in the end, it makes your drawer look like it was done in a cabinet shop. I used a chisel to get out as much wood glue as I could before I took Minwax wood filler to the entire thing to make this thing clean and smooth and level. And there was a nail that I shot through the inside of the drawer, and so I used a nail set just to pound it in, and I was able to cover that up all the way with the wood filler. I'm now going to drill holes into each corner of my drawer and insert a dowel rod. This is going to make the drawer indestructible and ensure that I'm never going to have a problem with it. One of my philosophies, especially when building with my home or building furniture, always overbuild everything. I've got kids, you've got family, everything is susceptible to wear and tear in normal use. Always overbuild everything. You'll see again in this video, my boys really like to help me out on these projects. This is my oldest son. He's 6 years old, and he loves helping me any way that he can. So really the last piece that I have to do is I have to cut the front. And this is the front of the drawer. This is the front of the entire thing. This is the piece that everyone's going to look at when they're in my house seeing this thing. So this piece has to look good. You will soon find out that we make it look really good. So here, right here, is the first time that we finally see the desk fully assembled. Now it's upside down, but I do get a good picture of what it's going to look like in the end. I'm going to take you hyper speed through my sanding process because if I didn't, it would take me hours to show you what I did. Building the box was the first step, but the sanding and the finishing just takes a while, and it probably takes longer than building the box in the first place. I started with 60 grit, then I moved to 80, 120, and then finally finished with 320 for that baby smooth wood finish. Throughout this process, as I covered every square inch of my desk, I used wood filler to fill every blemish and then sanded to follow. I then used just a regular piece of sandpaper in my hand to knock down the edges in the corners. We loved the color of this desk, so I used a natural wood stain just to bring out the textures of it. I finally finished this desk completely with Beveling polyurethane. I did 3 coats on 95% of this desk. The bottom side of the drawer I only ended up doing 1 coat because it was unnecessary to do 3 coats. In between each coat, I orbital sanded with 800 grit sandpaper. That's very important, especially after your first coat, as the first coat raises the grains of the wood. And after the second coat, it's important also to take out any blemishes. After the third coat, you're good and you shouldn't have any problems. I find it very handy to have a microfiber towel on hand to wipe down the wood after you're done sanding. I let each coat dry for a full 24 hours before proceeding to my next step. The bolts that I use on this project are these 1/4 inch, 3.5 inch long lag bolts. I did use a washer with them to ensure that they're never going to slip through the back of my desk. I had to move a few things to make room for this desk, and then I recruited my wife to help me hang it. The desk is not too heavy, but it would have been really awkward to hang with just one person. So I asked my wife if she could just put her back into it, wink wink, and help me hang it up real quick. It went super easy with my impact driver, and the lag bolts went right into the wood studs. I shouldn't have a problem. That thing should be up there forever. I've said this before, but I'm going to say it again. It feels really good to work this hard on a project, even this simple, and to see it becoming tangible right before my eyes. We can do anything one step at a time. How do you eat an elephant? You eat an elephant one bite at a time. If you want to build it, just start. If you want to do it, just start. We can do it one step at a time. For my next step, I called up my buddy Russell, who works and installs cabinets for a living. This video is not going to be a good how-to on how to install drawer slides because he does it so quick, but there's plenty of other videos on YouTube that you can find how to install drawer slides. Do you remember when I said early on in the video that I needed a 1/2 inch of clearance on each side of the drawer for these slides to fit perfectly? Well, you're soon going to find out why. I was about a 1/16 inch too wide and the drawer did not fit right. It wanted to scrape against the cabinet and there was not enough clearance. But Russell, because he does this every day and because he does this all the time, had an easy solution. It took a little bit of elbow grease, but we were able to figure it out. So you're going to see here that he tries to push and it stops and it doesn't want to go any further, and it's not catching on the drawer slide, it's catching on the wood, and that's not the way it should be. I didn't end up getting a good video of what we did to fix it, but I'll tell you about it. And then we took the slide out from inside the cabinet, scored along the top of the slide, And our goal is to take out the first piece of ply on the inside of this cabinet. The piece that we took out was the one right here. It ended up really looking good. It never affected the outside look of the cabinet. And also what you don't see is we ended up using a 1.5-inch chisel as well to pry. Final step of this whole build is to mount the face of this drawer. Now we have to get this right because I only made one face and we can't mess up on it. So taking multiple measurements and making sure the depths of your pre-drilled screws, your screws are short enough, your screws are long enough, all the above is important to figuring out and making sure that you're doing everything right. In this case, it would be measure twice and drill once. I think you get what I'm talking about. The last 2 screws are going in, then guess what? The entire piece is finished. Thank you so much for watching this. This was not a super detailed how-to, but at least you got to see the process of how I built this desk. I really like the way it turned out. My wife loves the way it turned out. She is using it every day. I encourage you, if you want something in your house or you want something built or you want something done, figure out how to make it happen. Figure out how to do it. We have too many resources in front of us for us not to be doing things like this. We shouldn't have to rely on someone else to do it. Just figure it out. Again, thanks for watching, and please subscribe for more to come. Comment below what your next project is going to be. I look forward to hearing from you.